Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Capturing the Game. It's the Game Within the Game podcast featuring the co-hosts Desmond Jones and Brady. So today we got another guest. He's a hometown guy from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He is the CEO of Traction. He is no other than Dre. Dre, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Good to be on here with you guys. How you guys doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. We've been blessed with a lot of great weather lately. I
Hmm.
can't really complain, man. Holidays coming up, so a lot of special things coming up. So
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Brady, how you doing on your end, man?
We're doing good here, enjoying the warm weather we're having right now. Kind of enjoying these evenings when it's getting cool out. So
Yeah,
not too bad though.
Hmm.
yeah. So Dre, man, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, man, so the audience could get to know who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Dre Muhammad. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Traction Athletic Performance. We've been in existence for 3 years. The focus and the mission of our organization is really just to give athletes a platform to really achieve their goals athletically, skill wise. But more importantly, our focus is to really build momentum beyond the game. And so really just build the human development side of the individual, utilizing the sports platform. I'm from Fort Wayne, born and raised, and I grew up playing I was a multi-sport athlete, basketball, football, baseball for a brief moment. So I dropped the pop fly and I quit in Wildcat. And so I was doing that for a little bit. But I grew up playing, my main sports were football and basketball. Definitely grew up to be, one of the I guess the top players in the area. I was all-state in both sports. Was under the coaching of Coach Gooden, who's a legendary coach now, who's doing tremendous things in Indianapolis. And then also played football at Harding, where we went on a 4-year stretch where we made it to state from my freshman year to my senior year and won my senior year. So just born and raised, man, from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Played sports, made it to the college ranks. I went to Purdue my first year, then transferred to IU, which is unheard of. And, that's one of those things where you just don't really hear about a guy transferring to a rival school. But transferred, finished my last 4 years out of IU, and was heavily involved and invested in athletes and really the game, and really, trying to give my all to it and give back to it, and really put something better out than what I had to experience or what I went through. So that's me in a nutshell. Just a guy who loves working with youth athletes, trying to get the most out of them, cultivate them, so they can have a purpose beyond the game and really impact beyond the playing field.
And that's really cool to hear. So what kind of led you in the path of wanting to help athletes and help them perform at certain levels of the game?
Well, there's multiple reasons as to why or what got me into where I'm at right now. I think growing up, I wasn't a guy that stood in the crowd. I was kind of an outcast for certain reasons, and just not really being able to fit in outside of sports. That got me into the human side of things. When we talk about really getting into where I am now, and just trying to find a way in which people don't feel like they're left out. I think that's the thing when you're younger. You look for a crowd to hang with, look for a crowd to be with. That's what ignited my passion to help people. Was that I didn't fit in with everybody else, and then obviously I played sports, so that was the common thing that I had in mind with a lot of people, and so that was kind of my comfort ground, or my place where I felt like I was a part of something. But as I got older, I knew that a lot of us who are excel in sports and do well, a lot of times we are befriended because we do have a skill or a gift, and it's not necessarily the human being or the other person that they're actually interested in. It's the I guess the association to the skill or the gift that brings people. So as I got older, I kind of just observed it a little bit more. Decided that I wanted to help athletes, um, you know, identify who they were outside of the game. And I know, obviously with COVID, a lot of athletes got hit and put in a bad situation because they spent their whole life building an identity in sports. And then COVID hits and it takes away sports. And now there's a lot of identity crisis going on during that time. And so for me, it was just really trying to identify the commonality of who you are outside the game, trying to find a place for you outside the game, and then utilizing my experience in sports to help athletes become, really just an avenue of service for humanity. So that's really, at a small scale, what got me into where I am today. I started my journey at AWP Sports, which is notable for having Tyler Eifert, Jalen Smith, Drew Tranquil, Austin Mack, all of those players. I specifically work with Austin Mack, so I knew what that was like to really work with athletes and develop them and build relationships with them and help them out. So all those things really got me into doing what I'm doing now, which is training athletes on a mental, spiritual, skill, athletic side.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know as you're explaining all that, you mentioned about COVID and athletes not being able to find like their identity or having like an identity crisis. With that, was there any challenges that you saw while you went through this process? And as you were training athletes and doing that, was there anything on your end that you might have picked up on during COVID?
Well, I realized that the identity crisis was heavier than I thought it would be, right? So it's like, oftentimes you hear parents or people in positions of authority speak on, it not being just about the game, right? Not just being about the sport. It's more to life than playing a game. But at the same time, we say those things, but oftentimes we still allow them to operate as if that's the only thing that they have to focus on. And so with COVID actually shutting everything down, I realized that there was a true need for identifying who people were outside the game. And so I think it exposed really the flaws and how we in authority figures or in authoritative positions have been guiding the youth, right? And so it's not the youth fault that they put so much into sports. It's really our fault because we permit them and allow them to do so, and not really have a plan A, I should say, because sports is plan B, right? It should never be the number one plan that you have set for yourself. And so I think that was the biggest thing was COVID forced everybody to figure out who they were. And some people have not in sports. Some people, damn near was, still struggling to this day because, they realized that, I'm nothing without sports and I got to figure this thing out before it's too late. So I think there was a lot of trials and difficulties that COVID, brought to the people, brought to the athletes that made them sit back and reflect on where they were and how they get better from it.
Yeah, I find that all like just very interesting because I think back on my own career when I played a couple years of baseball at Indiana Tech, and then I stopped playing just because I wanted to like I was better in the books than I was an
Hmm.
athlete at the time, and
Yeah.
so I wanted to focus on my academics at the time, and I just remember like just that transition. It was real quick, and I remember I went through. I felt like looking back on it, I probably went through identity crisis because it was the first time in my whole
Yeah.
life I ever like I stopped playing sports. Like I didn't have like practice
Yeah.
to go to, I didn't have a coach to call upon or anything, and it was just weird. Like so, what was like how was working with some of the kids during these times?
Well, I think it was a beautiful challenge for me personally because,
Yeah,
one of the things for me that I tell parents and I tell children all the time is that, you know, I'm a trainer. I've been blessed to have a great deal of success in training athletes, more so receivers, right? So when you look at Austin Mack, you look at DS Scridge, Ben Skoranek, those are three dudes right now that I started with that are now all in the NFL. And then there's a handful of college players. There's a handful of high school players, and they're all following that same path. And I'm saying all that to say, uh, one of the things I tell parents is that, man, I can care less about the athletic side of it if you want to compare it to who you are and what your purpose and passion is and what it is that you're trying to accomplish outside the game. Now, can we take the game and utilize it to the nth degree? Absolutely. But I think for me, The challenge was really helping them to identify it themselves, because we can always identify things for other people, right? But the power is in them identify it for themselves, or them realizing that, look, this is the reality. This is important. This is what I need to do to move forward. And so for me, it was dealing with so many different personalities in the youth age, that prep age. You deal with so many different backgrounds, so many different people that's influencing them, so many people that got their ears, their attention, so many distractions. And how do I get each individual, or the majority of the individuals, to see that, look, we got to have something bigger in this game. And we got to make that our number one priority, and figure out what your purpose is in life, and figure out what your passion is, and then utilize sports to extract that and to build on that. So I think that was the thing, was it was really working with the multitude of athletes that we work with, and getting each one to see it, because you got to maneuver. It's not a one size fit everybody. It's a, you got to really cater it to each individual in their upbringing. So that was the biggest challenge that I think existed, and it still exists to this day. Because what if COVID gets worse, right? Like, it's not over. We still in this thing, and what if something else comes, and sports all of a sudden just stops, which nobody. I mean, who would have thought that sports would have just stopped on us? Ain't nobody thinking that. We was thinking that the bubble was gonna be, we was gonna keep moving. Everybody thought it was gonna keep going, and it just stopped on us. So what happens if sports shuts down completely? How many people in America or society are gonna be lost trying to figure this thing out? Because look, this is what I gave my life to. This is what I'm giving my life to, and now I don't have it. So I think that's the biggest thing, is identifying what it is that's why do we need sports to get to where we need to get to, and where is it that we need to get to, and get out of sports as much as possible. I tell players too as well, and parents, especially in the game of football, because that's at Traction, we do really well in football, right? We don't dabble into soccer and stuff like that, but we do really well in football. And anything about sports or football is a sport that's so aggressive, that it's one of the sports that takes more from you before it gives back to you. And you got to dang near make it to the league before it really gives back to you the way it should. So I think it's, let's get it before it gets us, or let's get the most out of it before it takes away the most from us. So that's the biggest challenge, is figuring out what real life is outside of sports and living it.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things, as you were mentioning in there, without sports. I know, as you're saying, if sports stop, like, we won't have it. And people are gonna, as you said before, the identity crisis. People are gonna realize that all they had for them, or for most people, that was just sports, and so it kept them going each day. And that's one of the things. As I just graduated last year, end of 2020, and that's what I've been trying to figure out, because I've done sports all my life, and now it's like I'm not doing that anymore, and it's just like, okay, now I'm just working and then going home. And this past spring, I picked up coaching for a high school track, that high school I graduated from. And I think for me, that's where I found my passion in, was like, okay, I don't have sports anymore, but now I'm still involved in sports, and I'm helping give back to the community, and to the kids that I saw grow up, because my sister was on the track team and just graduated high school. So I saw those kids grow up. And for me, being able to give back and coach them was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So going with that, what are some things you would say to somebody who may not know where they're at right now with life, within sports, like that? Maybe they just graduated high school and done with sports and aren't doing it at the next level, or just graduated college and didn't make that next step to go on. What would you kind of give to them?
Well, one of the advice that I would give is, a lot of times I talk to the athletes about what is success, right? Success is subjective for all of us. And I think it's subjective in one aspect, but I think it's objective in another aspect. And the objectivity of it is that success is really based on you living out your purpose, or you maximize what your purpose is. And so one of the things that I always tell children is, one of the easiest ways to find your purpose is identify the most effective thing that you do with the least amount of effort, right? It's like, if I took a hammer and I try to change the TV, I won't be able to change the TV. So there really is no success for me. I can break the TV and change it up that way, but I ain't changing no channel. But if I grab a remote and I try to hammer in the nail might go in a little bit, but it ain't gonna go in as if I was to use a hammer. And so it's identifying what the objective is and identifying the purpose. And so if I took the hammer and I hit the nail in, it's probably gonna be successful. If I took the remote and I changed the TV, it's gonna be successful. So with each individual, it's really identifying what you do well with the least amount of effort. And if you can identify that, I never knew that. I'm an introvert, but I never knew that I can build relationships with people. I never knew that because my whole life I wasn't trying to build no relationship with nobody. I was just internally taking things, and I had an experience where maybe my relationships weren't so good because maybe I was that dude that was getting picked on. So maybe I grew into learning how to talk to people, how to work with people, how to build relationships and connections with people. And if that is my purpose or that is a function of my purpose, then I got to identify what's the grand scheme of things and then work that function into that purpose. So I think it's just about, obviously we know that everybody purpose is some type of service to humanity, right? That's common. That's just what it is for us as individuals. And if you look at some of the great athletes that have played the game and who have given everything up for service beyond themselves, you look at people like Muhammad Ali, you look at people like Pat Tillman. I mean, these individuals believed in something and they gave their career for what they believed. And by doing so, they were servicing humanity. So I think you have to start with, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to service people. Like, I got a gift to give to the world. Now, what is the easiest thing or the most effective thing that I do without even trying? And if I can find that, then I think I'll find, a way closer to my purpose. And so I think that's the advice. And it may be coaching, you know what I'm saying? It may be you become an athletic director, you may become an agent. Like, one of those things or some of these things can actually be something that gets you towards your purpose, or it could be your purpose, right? Eugene Parker was one of the best agents to ever do it, right? And he was so damn good at it, it's hard to say that wasn't his purpose. And so I think it's just identifying what it is for you, and not getting so clouded with maybe what you want to do because you have a passion to do it, but what is it that you're really good at? And let's identify the path that we should go based on what you're really good at.
Yeah, that man, because like for me, that's what made like walking away from baseball easy because I knew that I was so
Mm-hmm.
much greater at technology and just everything that goes into it, like with electronics, writing either software or like I always had a fallback plan. So, my
Yeah.
heart goes out to the athletes that are still, trying to figure out what their purpose is. Even just
Mm-hmm.
people that are not, athletics that still just, going through life, just trying to figure out what their purpose is, what they, what should they be doing. And a lot of people tell them or pump them up with stuff that they could be
Yeah.
doing versus them kind of figuring it out for themselves just to
Yeah.
see if, going by trial and error trying to figure out, this is what's best for me. So I just appreciate to hear that we got people out here like you that's really, hitting the nail and just trying to, coach students and coach young athletes up in this matter because
Mm-hmm.
like
And,
that's
and can and can you remember when you were trying to figure it out? I know I could because I tell people all the time,
mm-hmm.
man, I fell into this on accident. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
I fell into this situation on accident. It was not
Yeah.
the way I'm talking. It may seem like I had a plan. I had no plan, right? I grew up. I said like most people. I raised my hand in elementary. What do you want to be? I'm gonna be an athlete. I'm gonna make a lot of money. I'm gonna buy a house for my family, my mom, and I ain't doing nothing else. And then as I got older, you realize the difficulty of actually making that happen or manifesting it.
Yeah.
And then you go through the process, and then you graduate from college, and it's like, damn, my career wasn't what I thought it would be, but this all I've been doing. So I gotta keep going. I gotta figure out how
Mm-hmm.
to make this work.
Mhm.
And thank God, for the fact that I continued and I still made it to the professional ranks. But in between the time of me graduating and me actually making it, man, I was like, yo, I don't know what I'm doing. My mom was like, you should think of something else. And I'm like, no, out of ignorance, like I stubbornness, I ain't doing nothing else. This is all I know. So
Yeah.
the loneliness or the hole that you feel when it's like, man, I've been giving my life to this, and I ain't got no coach telling me I gotta get up at this time. I ain't gotta be at no meeting at this time. So it was like a sense of hopeless freedom. It's like I'm free, but I'm hopeless. And so, man, I fell into this on accident. So I'm just thankful to God that I fell into something like this, and allowed me to keep rolling.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that we wanted to ask you though is what, like how did you come up with traction? You know,
Mhm.
what made you to start traction? I know Brady. I knew he was about to jump in and ask that. Is that right?
No, it was some along the lines I was going to ask that, but I was going to say about how we just had a podcast recording the other day about with people you want to do a certain thing, like as you're
Mhm.
saying, you want to be an athlete. That's what you want to do. There's people that are listening that just want to go have their mindset for one certain thing, but
Yeah.
usually that's not how it works out for most people. And
Mhm.
as I know, we're talking like God's gonna give you something different to do. You're gonna have it in your head, like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And then,
Yeah.
as you said, you did this by accident. And I think that's just one of God's calling is just like, okay, yeah, you can only go so far by yourself. And I think that was
Yeah.
just God say, okay, here you go. Here's here's traction for you. And as Desmond said,
Yeah.
we're curious like what that is. So if you could
Yeah.
just let the people know.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting because when I was in the professional rank, so I when I graduated, which is a whole nother story within itself, I decided to pursue the NFL. I said, you know what? I'm gonna pursue this NFL thing and see what happens. So in a matter of 8 weeks, what I'm saying, I had, it was, I don't want to say a miracle, but it was definitely um, um, uh, an opportunity that God presented me with and was with me throughout the whole process, because in 8 weeks, I went from a 4.72 to a 4.35, and that's unheard of. So it was I don't know if you ever seen the movie Angels in the Outfield, when when the Angels start coming, and they and they was carrying them through them games. It was sort of like that, where it was like it was this force with me, and God was with me, and I was training and I was working, and I was able to do so. Now, mind you, I just came from a 5-year career where my stats total was like 230 yards receiving. You ain't, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy that actually had a chance with, I mean, those stats, but I'm gonna be real, they was whack. Like if I was a scout, I'd be like, nah, bro, we can't even work with you on this one. So
Right.
so I ended up running fast. And I remember going through that phase where I just had my pro day. I ran really well. Scouts were questioning, who is this guy? What happened? Right? It's you got all this ability. What happened to you? So I had to explain the conversation or the situation. And then I was in a drive class. I don't know if you guys ever heard of DeMarcus Ganaway and Brandon Kenny, but both are my cousins. And Brandon Kenny ended up going to Nebraska. DeMarcus Ganaway went to a smaller school, but he was already signed to the New York Jets. And me and DeMarcus' agent was both Eugene Parker. And my brother Brandon, my cousin Brandon had a different agent. And so I went from doing that, and then I didn't get called up until August or July, right? I remember I was playing a college video game with my cousin before I had to get my hair cut. Late at night, he was thrashing me, so I'm mad already. I ain't trying to talk to nobody. I'm one of those dudes. You play me, you beat me. We ain't got nothing to talk about, bro. Like, let's run this back. And so he was beating me, and I got a call from Oakland, and it was the Raiders that said, we want to fly you in tomorrow. Now, I'm not prepared. I ain't got nothing. I ain't got nothing ready. I'm just 10 o'clock at night. I was ready to go coach a flag game the next day. And then I had to get on a flight, went to Oakland, and then was there for the camp time duration, probably about 4 weeks, got released. And then the CFL was recruiting or scouting. They scouted NFL practices, called me up. So I signed with the CFL, but that summer or that season didn't start to the summer. So I had a whole time period in which I had to train and whatnot. So I did that. And to make a long story short, I ended up going to the CFL. And throughout that time period, I was trying to really figure this thing out, because I'm like, yo, I ain't trying to spend 7 years, 8 years trying to pursue this thing. If it don't work, it don't work. I got to know what I'm doing. So I got into training with AWP. And I remember going, because I used to train there, and seeing the amount of energy and effort or uh, amount of stuff that they just poured into the athletes. And it was like genuine, and I ain't never seen it before. This was when sports training was becoming popular, right? They was ahead of the curve. And I said, I want a job. Can I work here? So they was like, yeah. So I started off as an assistant working with youth, right? It wasn't nothing big. It was just something to keep money coming in until I left for the CFL. And then once I left for the CFL, I already built up this passion that, look, I got to go back and give back. Like at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. And my coach in Oakland, who now is the receiver coach for Nebraska, actually, he was, or Wisconsin, I believe. When I got released, he was saying, "You ever thought about coaching?" Now, me, I didn't already got my perception of coaches. I'm like, man, I ain't trying to be no coach, man. I don't like these. They be lying. They ain't real. They mean. All the so he asked me that, and that question kind of stirred in me a little bit with my passion. And I said, you know what? I want to get into training. That's what led me to AWP. So when I was with the CFL, I was having a really good camp, and my sister had a wedding like one day, and I had to miss camp. So I had already called and made arrangements and let them know, like my wife, I mean my sister has a wedding, and I need to go to that wedding. So am I excused? Yeah, you're excused, blah blah. So that day came up, having a solid camp, real good camp. And I went down, I said, okay, I'm leaving to go to my sister's wedding. And they said, you sure about that? Because we want to keep you. But if you leave, we're gonna be forced to cut you. So, but the night before, it was like a voice in my head that said, just quit. It said, just quit. And I'm like, it was like a burden that came off of me, because to hear a voice say, just quit, it was like the voice that helped me run that 40. And so it's like, I was seen through that. I'm gonna be seen through this. So when I went down there, they didn't know that I was cool. I was fixed on quitting. They didn't know I was like, I'm good. I don't need to play. And then they gave me that ultimatum, and I said, I'm done. And then what happens is I went through a process of training athletes. One of my first athletes, or two of my first athletes, were Austin Mack and Ben Skoranek. Started with both of them when Ben was in the 7th grade. Started with Austin Mack when he was about in the 8th grade going into, or 9th grade going into 10th grade, before he played varsity. So took that experience of really developing players or learning, and then giving them all back what I had. And then what happened is they started to really develop. I started to build strong relationships. One of my strongest relationships was with Urban Meyer, who's with the Jaguars now. And I'm talking about like, not a, you know, Urban my guy, and I'm just talking like, if I called Urban right now, he'll answer, because we've built that relationship over a period of time. And Austin was one of their top recruits going in the 2016 class. And so I just kind of kept going with AWP. And then at one point, AWP had dissolved. And then when it dissolved, we got put in a tough situation. I'm like, man, I'm just a trainer. I don't know nothing about owning no business, running no business, operating nothing. I just been training for so long. And then that same voice, that same voice was like, look, man, you got this. So in a week, we shut down in November of 2017 or 2018. One of those years, we've been almost going on 3 years. And then in a week, we started Traction. And when we started Traction, me and my partner, our co-owner, Lawrence Barnett, who was training with me, we just said, we're going to take this mug and we're going to run with it. And now today, we've built it up to be a pretty good organization, and got a lot left. And I got a lot more in the future to look forward to.
Yo, I don't even know what to say after that. You almost end the podcast after that. No, but man, that's like super inspiring, man. Because every step of the way, you just let God lead you.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize what that voice was. You you went through a lot of different hard troubles, because a lot of people could have just end up like, no, I'm gonna just go ahead and miss this wedding because I'm gonna try to make it. You know,
Yeah.
but you put your family first, and then more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, you also put God first. You listen to that voice and decide to be like, yo, I'm gonna just quit. Like,
Yeah.
not many people is gonna say that. It's like,
Yeah.
so like, super product, like, props to you for just going through that, especially for what you're doing here, in the city of Fort Wayne. you
Mm-hmm.
know More kudos to you for that, because
No, I
especially
appreciate it.
Yeah, especially because like I know when I first came into town, I heard about AWP, and I came into town like in 2010. I first heard about AWP. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's what's up. But I didn't realize like everything that had happened that had closed down because pretty much everyone with their separate ways, and you kind of picked up the torch from there.
Yeah.
And it's especially just being able to again like hear you talk through that's going on. It's great that to see that you are working with these athletes and just especially you feel with God, you have you spiritual, and that you let God lead you every step of the way. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like these kids are in no better hands than yours right now.
Well, I'm trying to do the best I can, and one of the things I didn't mention, and I just start actually revealing and telling athletes this, because at one point I was kind of ashamed. I was ashamed to even tell players this, because it was one of those things where now when I look at it, it's like I couldn't let that happen. But I'm real big on character, right? So it's like, not just what you say, not just what you do, but what you think. Like what you think, say, and do all should be in sync with each other. And unfortunately for me at the time, I didn't have the character that I thought I had when I made it to the pros, right? It's like, because sometimes we do the right thing because people are looking. And then sometimes we do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, no
Yeah.
matter who's looking. And I remember, man, it was bad, right? So I'm like, I get the contract, and I'm looking at the contract with the Oakland Raiders, and I'm like, 1.4 million. What? I'm like, this contract worth 1.4 million, right? And I know that don't seem like a lot when you talk about bets, but for somebody who went through what I went through, didn't have the career I want, I'm looking here, I'm signing a $1.4 million contract. And I remember when I signed it, it was bad because I had signed a contract, and I'm talking to a family member. And mind you, I ain't never gambled before. I don't know what that life looked like. And I'm like, man, Jordan had all that money, and he lost this, and he had a gambling problem. He crazy. So you know how we judge when we don't know what it's like to be in certain situations. And I'm sitting there with a $1.4 million contract, and in my head, I'm already planning to lose it all.
Yeah.
And it was because my character wasn't matching up at all, and it was weak at the moment. So the pressure of signing a $1.4 million contract was too much. And I remember calling my mom and talking to her and saying, I don't even like this stuff. I don't like to I don't like to shine. I don't like people in my business. I don't like none of this stuff. But what it was I was seeing my character being revealed to me, not to anybody else. It was being revealed to me. And that was one of the things that catapulted me away from the game until I can build my character up so that I can go to athletes and say, hey man, this is what's important. Because if I didn't, hell, you might hear a story of me, because that's just the reality of it. And I'm not afraid to say it now, because I think if I can express that reality, I can help children. So now I'm like, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. It ain't worth that much. Like, you ain't got to lose your character, for a little bit of cheddar. And you know what I'm saying? You can keep your character intact to achieve what you want to achieve. And now what I'm finding is I feel more at peace making less money and having an impact than I would have if I would have had that 1.4 million, which would have been for sure 30 for 30 coming from Fort Wayne, Indiana. It would have been a 30 for 30.
No, that's awesome. And then just saying that about the character and things like that, because I know that's how I am personally too. I'm not in it for the money. Like that's I coach. I was like, okay, this is fun. I enjoy it. Like it's not, and that's what I know people say like with your like a job, like it's more fun when you're doing something that you love, and it's not a job anymore. And I think from listening to you right now with saying about that contract, I think that's what we found is that when you're doing traction, you found something that you actually love and enjoy, and you don't have to worry about like stressing about like the money, and you're just there giving back to the athletes. So I think that's cool that you had that realization while you saw that contract in front, and you realized your character and that you probably didn't even know going into it. You probably thought, okay, I'm gonna get a contract, I'm gonna sign it, I'm gonna go play. and it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that was revealed to you, because now we have you here. And I don't think if you would have signed that and you would have gone to that, I don't think we would be here now talking with you and getting all this experience.
Oh, I can tell you for sure I wouldn't be here. I'm telling you, it would have been, I mean, it took a whisper from a family member, or something that I don't even do, to say that, hey, that's in you. I mean, for you to entertain a thought to that degree, it's in you. So you got to cleanse that thing up out of you before you even get worthy enough to make that type of money. Because you hear the stories about athletes losing so much money, whether they're just not aware that they're losing it because they have people taking it from them, manipulating it, deceiving them to get it out, or if they just got a bad habit that they waste. No matter, you can have $100 million contract, but if you got a bad habit and you out here wasting 50,000 and 60,000, I mean, that type of money, when you talk about servicing people, can change the course of so many people's lives, right? And so it's like, let's not waste any money at all, because when sports ends, that money might not flow in like you want it to. So let's be effective, with the use of that money.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. Even for the people that not athletes, like just be mindful of what you do with your money, man.
Yeah.
You know, man. So I didn't know that you had Eugene Parker as your agent. Do you have any like Eugene Parker? Because I feel like this man, I know he's like a legend,
Yeah.
but I never really hear too much about him so much. So I definitely love to hear the Eugene Parker stories.
Well, I grew up real good friends with Brandon Parker, so Eugene's son.
Right.
I grew up, spending the night over his house every now and then, because I play AAU basketball for Bless IJN, right? And Brandon played for it, and so I grew up just watching him from afar, right? And you know, he was the first Black man that I seen that made the money and had the success that he had, and he didn't play professional sports, right? Nor was he in the game or in the streets or anything like that. So for me, it was like, yo, this is possible. So he inspired me from a youngin to say, hey, I want to be an agent, because that was one of my first things that I said I wanted to be. And then I got older and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna play this game, right? And so he inspired me to be that. And when I would go over his house, when I would go over Brandon's house, they had a barbershop, they had a basketball court, they had an indoor swimming pool, a beautiful acreage of land. I mean, just it was like a dream house. Like you grow up watching Macaulay Culkins, all that stuff, and it's like, yo, this is real. Like people actually live like this. And so, he never spoke about any material. Everything he dropped was a principle for me, or even if it was an inherited experience from his son, it was principle after principle after principle. And I think that was the unique thing about Eugene is Eugene, as great as he was as a man, and this further validates his humility as a man and his greatness. I remember when I ran my 4.3, right? And Eugene, like, he giving me advice, maybe you should go back, because there was a chance that I could have went back to school, through some transfer, or through some NCAA type of deal, and it got declined, and I was going to had a chance to go back at it again, but I just said, I'm cool where I am. So he recommended I go back to school, and I told him, I said, look, Gene, I said, man, I just feel like God telling me to keep going forward. He said, if God told you to keep going forward, he said, Dre, I can't overrule that. I can't tell you, that. So let's keep rolling. So I ran the 4.3, and Gene, I was on a low totem pole of his clientele, right? You got, now check this out. You got Larry Fitzgerald, you got Devin Hester, you got all these people, and then you got Dre Muhammad, right? It's like Eugene, for him to even say that he would accept the fact that I would be a client of his, it was like, bet I'm about to do everything I can to represent him in the best manner. Because,
Yeah,
for me, it's like I got arguably the best agent in the game. There is no superior to Eugene Parker, right? And he ain't have to take me, right? But it was out of respect and love for either my father or the fact I was from Fort Wayne that he said, I'm gonna get, I'm gonna roll with him. And he had told me as I was going through, because during the summertime before I got a call, I was like, damn, Eugene, he got all these top clients. I know he busy with them, whatever he doing, all his deals. He got so much going on. I'm gonna become my own agent. But I said I'm gonna become my own agent, but I ain't firing Eugene Parker. What I look like firing Eugene Parker? It's like, come on, man. Like, I ain't doing it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the information from all of the scouts, all of the GMs, all of the teams, and I'm gonna call them every day until I get a call. So what I would do is I would send emails and call offices, send emails and call offices every day for a summer until they got so tired of me. They said, man, who the hell is this calling? Let's call this dude back. And I would talk to sometimes it'd be just the typical office person. Sometimes it'd be the receiver coach for the team. Sometimes I never spoke with a GM, but I was trying to get to that point. And when I got the call from Oakland, I went there and I had to try out still. So I tried out, I was prepared. They chose me over another receiver. So the next day I started camp and Eugene called me, right? And he's a busy man. You just don't have that much success and not be busy. I mean, hell, I think I'm super busy and I ain't nowhere near successful as Eugene Parker. But, when it comes to what he said, I said, Gene, thank you, man. I appreciate everything you did for me. I said, man, I'm just grateful. And the man as successful as he is said, Dre, because he had a really good relationship at that time with the general manager was named McKenzie for the Raiders. And he said, Dre, he said, I ain't do this, man. He said, you did all this. So here it is, a man who got that much success. And sometimes when you get that much success, you just take all the credit for every single thing that goes on that somebody gives you credit for. A lot of times people aren't even humble enough to say, I ain't do that, you did that. And Eugene said, hey, my man, you did all this. It wasn't me. And then at the time, it was interesting because, and I appreciate him for doing this, at the time, I didn't even sign with Eugene. He was just representing me up until a certain point. And then when I signed my contract, I signed with Eugene after that. So he was being super wise from a business standpoint, saying, it ain't smart for me. I'm up here, I'm doing this. And it ain't ego or nothing like that. It's just like, it's business. I got all these clientele up here. I'm gonna see if he really want it. Because sometimes, it's like we be wanting things, or we think we want things and we really don't want it. We just like the thought of having it. So Eugene was actually forcing me to see if I wanted it. And when I proved that I wanted it, he said, okay, now you're worthy to be signed because the work that you did, but it was you that did it. And so he was always with me after that moment and even before that moment. And then Gene said something to me because this when I said I'm done playing. And I got it in my phone to this day. I sent a screenshot to his son probably about a half a year ago, because me and BP were still cool. We talk, often. And I said, hey, man, this is the last thing your dad told me. This is the last thing your dad told me. And I'm going to pull it up to see if I can find it. But this is the last thing he told me. I didn't even talk to him after this because what he said propelled me so far in what I'm doing now off of just these words. He said, these are the notes that he actually said to me. And I was on the phone just writing it down because I know if you're going to be successful and I can accept the principles, I can be successful. He said, always do what you personally feel is best. That was his first thing. Then he said, the one thing about sports is it teaches us how to give our all and grind. Now it's finding something to fill that void. We have to find something we can put our all into. This straight from Eugene. This ain't even me making this up. And he said, he made a decision early because he knew He could play when he was given a chance, but he disliked his future being in the hands of others. Now that's heavy because when you playing sports, they determine if you going there or you staying here. He said he disliked it. He said law school filled his void after leaving basketball. Then he goes and says, use all the barriers that I've been through to succeed in my career because I put a lot in the sports, so transfer it over and use all the connections I've gained. I'm still trying to practice some of these things he's telling me. Then
My God.
he said, most people don't want to grind, but that's the core of success. Then his last words was to me, demand excellence. That was Eugene notes to me, my last conversation with him before he had passed. And that was a few years. Actually, it wasn't my last conversation. It was my last intimate conversation with him. We still saw each other and spoke briefly, but that was his last thing that he poured into me. And to this day, those principles still apply to me. And that's what I keep in my head when I say, man, I stopped playing sports because Gene said I needed to found something to put my all into. Now let me follow this guy. And that's what he did. So, man, Gene was a different human being. And when I say different, I'm not saying it on a scale that he wasn't to a point that none of us can attain. He just practiced and demanded excellence. And he got to such a point. And when I tell you, man, he left so much for his family. He left so much for his family. And I'm talking to B and I'm like, damn, if they did nothing else ever in their life, they settled because Gene operated at such a high degree. And when you look at Curtis Martin, you look at Larry Fitzgerald, you look at Deion Sanders, Devin Hester, all these individuals can speak on the character of Eugene. And they had way more conversations than I did with Eugene. So he was a spectacular human being, right? He was a one of a kind in the realm that he was in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we've had people on before that have talked about him, and just from what you said, I think it matches up with what we've heard so far about him. I never knew about him until this podcast has started, and that's when I found out about about him and about his life and the way you were just describing him and the things that he said to you. Going forward is things that I know people listening are going to take to heart from this, because that's just solid words to just live by, and just to know that you don't want other people in charge of your own destiny. Like, you're in charge of what you're doing. And as you said, it's just, if you want to work for it, you're going to work for it. If not, you're going to realize in 5-10 years, like, oh, I didn't try as hard and I regret not going after this or not going after that. So I think it's like, I'm just glad that he gave those words to you that you have given to us today with that, because it's just, I don't know, there's no other words to just to describe like what you said and what you're pouring out to us.
Yeah, he will go down, if he hasn't already went down, as for sure one of the most influential people in sports. But man, it's gonna be hard as hell to have anybody in this area eclipse him as the most influential man out this city, because damn near everybody that's influential out this city was off the tree of Eugene Parker. So I mean, that just speaks to how strong the roots and the branch were. I mean, the stump was for him to influence so many different people. And when you think about traction, and you look at traction, I don't think there'll be a traction if it wasn't for Eugene Parker. I honestly don't think it'll be a traction if it weren't for Eugene Parker, because there were certain things that had to happen and sequence in certain ways for this to get to this point. So even he had influence in where traction is today.
Yeah, man, all this is dope. Like, this is definitely gonna go down as one of my favorite episodes. This is all, man, just because I just want to go back and just re-listen to and just relive the certain moments of this podcast. But But yeah, man, that concludes our first part. We're gonna let that one settle. We're gonna let that one settle where it's
Yeah.
at, man. But yeah, that concludes our first part of our podcast. So now we're gonna transition. We're gonna have a little fun. We're gonna transition to our rapid fire, which we call the game within the game segment, where we just ask little fun questions just to have fun after we had a nice little serious conversation. So my
Yeah.
question is are you ready to play?
Let's go. I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right, so we start off basic. We ask a little small questions. So the first one we asking is, do you prefer chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin?
Chocolate chip. That was no brainer. As soon as you said chocolate chip, everything else canceled out.
I respect it. I prefer oatmeals, but
Hmm.
um, most of the time I'm always eating like a chocolate chip cookie like right behind oatmeal cookies. Matter of fact, I feel like I'm
Be
cheating
cheating,
on.
be cheating, be
Yeah,
cheating
I've been
on them.
cheating on oatmeal cookies with chocolate chips. So I
The
get it.
chocolate chip by far for me.
Now, like chocolate chip, do you like the double chocolate chip, or like the ones like the
No,
big chunks? No.
I don't need too much. Just give me straight chocolate chip, Subway, McDonald's, Costco's cookies, chocolate chip, just regular.
It's the Subway cookies for me.
So, are you a TV shows guy or a movies guy?
Man, I'm a movie guy.
What's your favorite movie?
Man, I got the Book of Eli. I got the Matrix. Um,
The
I
Matrix got
mean,
some great quotes in there.
man, great principles in it as well.
Yeah.
I'm really a guy that anything that Denzel, Will Smith, that
Hmm.
they rolling in,
Yeah.
I like that. And then you just throw the Matrix in there. So that's where I'm at. And then with my son, I got to do the children movie. So I do some Disney, some Lion King, stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I'm
Of
definitely a
course.
movies guy.
Okay. Yeah, I prefer TV shows only because of the fact that the seasons and more I get to see more characters
Hmm.
and more development. But dude, you can convince me to sit down and watch a movie any day of the week though. Or even if it's an old movie, it don't matter. Especially the Will
Hmm.
Smith joints, like I'll go back and watch them. Favorite TV show all the time probably for me would be The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, just because of Will Smith.
Hmm.
So
I'm a Martin guy. I'm a
okay.
Martin guy.
See, that's how me and my wife started. We was watching Martin, and well, when we first started dating, we was always watching Martin every night. That was the thing that we
Hmm.
did. So man, I'm here with you, man. What's your favorite Bible verse?
Ah, man, that's a good one. I go back and forth with so many of them,
Hmm.
but if I had to choose a favorite Bible verse, um, man, I'll start with, and I may not say it word for word, but man, I just love the fact that God created us in His image and likeness. That I mean, that's a simple one in Genesis, and so to know that we are created from the Creator, and we have some of the spiritual likeness of the Creator, the image of the Creator. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to have those similarities as the Creator, and to possess not all of, but some of the power that the Creator has blessed us to possess in our ability to accomplish things in our will. So that's one of my ones that I really reflect on, to know that I'm after the ultimate or the Creator.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like to say one of my favorites is Romans 1:16. Um, Basically, for I'm unashamed of the gospel of Christ. That's one of the ones I've been trying to live by and trying to
Hmm.
just share with people, whether it be through like FCA or through like Bible studies with friends.
Yeah.
That's kind of when I'm kind of going off. And they got a Christian rap group too, so that
Hmm.
also helps as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's I'm in First Corinthians 6 is like so we're all bought and paid with a price, and that's
Hmm.
the blood of Jesus. So that's the one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, without going too deep in it, I love reading scripture,
Yeah.
and even more nowadays because, man, if when you become a follower of Christ, um, or just a follower of the principles of Christ, whatever you want to call it, man, you walk. It's a heavy walk because
Heavy.
it's because the world gonna oppose you. if you striving to be like that. So I just think is the one of the reasons why I struggle with having a favorite is because the practice of all of them and really the digestion or ingestion of all of them to become you. Like we all should become walking scriptures, right? Where you can see me, I can see you, and I should be able to recite a scripture based on your representation of who you say you believe in. So I think for me, it's a hard one to say, but if, you know, obviously if I had to say one, I definitely love being created and being one of the greatest creations of God.
Ooh, God preach. God preach.
Not going to the next one. So this is kind of a this or that part. So would you choose between Terrell Owens or Randy Moss?
Randy Moss.
Hands down.
Randy Moss.
It's the reason why the saying is created. I feel like that question too easy. I'm gonna have to ask or just
Randy
change
Moss.
the question.
Now Terrell Owens was more productive, I believe.
Yeah.
And his yards or whatnot. But I just feel like Randy changed the game. I feel like Randy changed the game. You know, anytime it's just like Jordan or Kobe. Anytime you shoot a shot, you say Kobe. And no matter how much I love LeBron, I ain't saying LeBron, right? I just ain't. And it's like with Moss, man, whenever you go over somebody's head, you got Moss. You ain't get Owens, you got Moss. So I think he changed the game completely. But I think Owens is right there with him.
Okay. Marvin Harris or Reggie Wayne?
That's a rough one. I'm gonna go with Harrison.
Yes.
I'm gonna go with Harrison. And the reason why I'm gonna go with Harrison was because neither one of them really, I don't think, talked like that. But Harrison was a silent, like he wasn't saying nothing. He was just coming in. Plus he was a shorter receiver. So like for me, he fit that mold. And then I used to have like a little mustache and everything. And people used to call me Marvin Harrison. So like I'm Marvin all day.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Brandon Marshall or Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown. I'm going Antonio Brown. Now let me put my disclaimer out there. I'm going Antonio Brown on the field. I mean, not through his little thing, on the field only. I'm not. No, but you know, regardless of what he went through, man, he a hell of a player. And I had the honor of watching him play in college because IU used to play Central Michigan, and you can watch certain players and be like, my gosh, that dude got it. And Antonio Brown, because he came in, I think he may have been a quarterback. I don't even know if he was a receiver or whatever, but he came in, he wasn't a scholarship dude. And to see him go from where he was to being the top receiver in the league at one point, I mean, I'm like, you got to roll, because Brandon Marshall, I think he was pretty consistent with where he was. But you know, Antonio Brown had to definitely incline his way up. So I'm going Antonio Brown. Plus, he's a small receiver again. So I'm rolling with him.
I got you. Favorite sports moment that you've seen or witnessed?
That I've seen or witnessed. I would say it had to be my senior year when we won state in football. Right? It's like, you know, high school football is one of those things where high school sports is like, you know, you don't know it's a business until after you get out of high school. And when it becomes a business, it takes away from the sensation of the sport. And you don't really, it's just not as fun, because it's like, damn, if I do this wrong, high school sports to me was like the last time you had that genuine, authentic feel, and you can really just do it for the love of the game. That to me, right? Other people have had different experiences, but I had to say my senior year winning state championship with all of my friends and all my teammates.
Man, that's awesome. That's an awesome experience to have. So one of our last questions for our rapid fire game. So you get the chance to take over any organization, whether it be any sports, any league. Which organization would you take over?
Oh man. Gosh, I never thought about anything like this. If I had to take over any organization, man, I probably would take over the Dallas Cowboys or the Raiders because I just feel like it's so much more that they can do because I think the Dallas Cowboys owe it to their fans to be more successful than they are.
Mm.
And I don't know Jerry, but you know, the amount of talent that they got for it not to, go down like it could go down, I feel like I would want to take over the Cowboys.
That's a good choice. That's a good choice.
Yeah. Solid choice for sure. But that wraps up the interview today with both the interview portion and our rapid fire game. So Desmond and I, we like to thank you, Dre, for joining us today on this podcast. For the people who are listening and viewing this, where can they find you and where can they follow you at?
Well, you can find on from an organization standpoint, tractionap.com. And then on social media, all of our pages on Instagram, on Twitter is @TractionAP. On Facebook is Traction Athletic Performance. And then if you wanted to find me personally, you can find me on Instagram as well as Twitter as with Dre_Muhammad. And that's where you can find us at. So we're not hard to find. We there on social media trying to make a splash.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. And for those listening and viewing, you can find us at Capturing the Game on Instagram at capturing_the_game pod. You can find us on Twitter at CTG_podcast. And you can search us up on YouTube and Facebook at Capturing the Game pod. Again, we'd like to thank you, Dre, for joining us. And we hope that we can have you again on another future episodes that we can dive deeper into more about you and about Traction.
No, absolutely. And I thank both of you for being patient with me, right? The viewers don't know the behind the scenes story, but maybe on another podcast we can give it to them. But I definitely thank both of you for having me on. It's definitely an honor to share space and time with you both. I appreciate and value what you guys are doing because it is giving, a lot of people insight on individuals who are doing something within sports and just giving them game. And so, man, my advice is just keep it rolling, man. I'm watching. So I definitely am viewing what you guys are doing, and I definitely would love to see more. And, if time permits us, I would definitely love to be on again with you guys.